Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing the 5 digital item swap, hosted by Rhonda Winstead, 49 Dragonflies, and Louisa Heinzel. So the challenge is to use 5 items that are printable. You download and print it, and then you use those items, and in this particular case, the challenge is to make a tag. So these are some close-up pictures of my rust because you're supposed to create some rust. And then I've made a two-sided tag. So here's one side of the tag, and in the beginning you saw the other. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I've printed out multiples of this 5 digital item swap. This is a download from Louisa Heinzel, and I will link her in the description box below. And you're to create a tag with the items on the sheet. The fishes and numbers are one item. Imitate some rust, real rust not allowed. Include your own handwriting with a pen or medium of your choice. Print the sheet as often as you want. Use from your stash and tools what you like. Have fun. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. So I'm going to move my silicone mat here first of all so that I can move my things around. Now I've gone ahead and cut them out. And I printed a couple of sheets at full size, and then I printed a sheet at 5x7 and cut everything out that I wanted. So here's a tag shape, but that's not going to be big enough for me. I'm going to make my own tag. So I've taken a piece of chipboard and I've created a larger tag, and I'll use that other tag shape, or at least part of it, in my composition. So the first thing I want to do is I want to coat this thing in gesso. So I'm going to bring back my little Teflon mat thingy and paint it with gesso. Now after the gesso's dry, we're ready to roll. And the reason I painted it with gesso is to kind of help protect the chipboard because I don't want stuff soaking into it. But the other issue with the gesso is it does tend to kind of resist, so you really have to work. You know, you could use any other kind of medium. You could use paint, or you could just leave it or glue paper on. But I'm taking my antique linen distress spray stain, and I'm just spraying it down with first the antique linen. And I want the runny drips. That's, you know, desirable here. But I want to get it mostly covered with this color, because it's not going to be a white tag by any means. And I just kind of let that drip down, and yeah, I've got a mess on my mat, but I have a remedy for that too, and you'll see that later. So I'm going to do wipe my hands off first, and I'm going in with my rusty hinge. And I'm basically going to do the same thing. So I'm going to tilt my tag and spray and let it run down. So I kind of get that rusty effect that, you know, where constant running water would rust metal. Now, obviously, this isn't a piece of metal. That's okay. You'll see. We'll get there. It's a process. So I just keep kind of spraying it with the rusty hinge, and then I'll go in with the vintage photo. So I'm using lots of different mediums today. I'll be using my spray stains, my spray oxides. I'll be using some of my Brusho, some of my Ken Oliver Sparks, you name it. So let's go in here now with the antique photo, the vintage photo, and get a little bit more darkness going here. And again, I'm letting this drip down. And I'll want to get a little bit more of the rusty hinge because I want a little bit more orange tint to it. And you'll be surprised at one of the items I used today, and you probably will think, well, I remember that. Because, yeah, let's bring back vintage. So I'm going to just set this aside to dry on its own for a little bit so it can make those shapes. And then you can see I took a piece of watercolor paper and cleaned up all that other ink with the watercolor paper. So now I want to come in with my Brusho, and I am going to come in with I want to say it's burnt sienna. And this stuff is really potent. Yeah, burnt sienna. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to wet my tag a little bit. And what you saw me doing was turning my fan because I have a fan blowing on it. I'm going to wet my tag, and I'm going to just drop some of this into those wet spots, and then I'm just going to move them with my water. Now that'll dry a lot different than what you see as it wet. It'll lighten up some, but I'm just kind of moving it around a little bit, trying to get it to kind of stay where I want it, and then I'm going to dry it. And now I'm going to come in with the Ken Oliver Sparks, and I'm going to come in with the turquoise, and I'm just going to dump it directly on, just in a couple of spots. You see how much darker that got after it dried, that sienna? That's kind of a trip because you expect the opposite to happen, but it doesn't. So I'm just moving this down the tag here, just to get that color moving down towards the top. And I'm lightening up quite a bit at the top because I'm not wanting it dark on top. Now see, I've tipped it the other way, and I'm letting that water kind of run so that I get those kind of, you know, movement. And I'm happy with it. It's still not quite rust, but we'll get there. You'll see. So I'm just kind of holding it up and letting it drip down and wiping while I do that. And now that it's dry, we're going to add some more color. Yeah, we are. So here I'm going to do some more of the rusty hinge. My hands are a mess, sorry about that. Because I want a little bit more rusty color on it, and I'm being more direct where I'm spraying it versus just letting it run down, because I want it to, you know, in certain places. So kind of let that, set it aside and let it kind of dry by itself a little bit, and then I'll dry it. And then I'm using my other paper, and I'm picking up all these speckly bits because I think they're pretty and I love them. And now I'm coming in with an oxide, and this is Crackling Campfire. And just kind of doing, you know, almost a direct spray again. And then I'm going to come in with some cracked pistachio. In hindsight, probably would have been better to let the Crackling Campfire dry a little bit before I did this, but I still like the way it came out, so I'm not too mad. Because it kind of just brings itself into there, and as long as it doesn't mix too much, and it does, but that's okay. All right, so that's dry. Now I'm going in here with some hickory smoke and trying to figure out why my sprayer isn't spraying properly. But you can see that those colors blended and just made this really cool little, I don't know, effect, for lack of a better word here. And what I'm doing is I'm looking for my black. And nope, that's not black, that's still hickory smoke. All right, so I want this to kind of dry a little bit, so I am gonna dry it. And now that it's dry, it made all those cool bubbles and stuff like that. So what I'm gonna do, because it's still partially wet, it doesn't wanna, just being stubborn about drying, and I don't wanna warp my tag too much, I'm gonna come in with the Frosted Crystal and just pour it on the wet spots and heat set it so that it begins to get some texture. So I'm just dumping it on, no real rhyme or reason here. And then tapping off, and you can see the spots that were really wet, it's stuck to, so that's fine. That's exactly what I was looking for. And I'm just using a scrap piece of an envelope I started to make because it was the nearest thing. You know how that goes. You can see my board is a mess, but I'm gonna go ahead and heat set this. So I'm going to emboss it. Make sure there's no excess. And you want to hit it with the tool until it turns clear and then move on. because you want it to stick, but you don't want it to melt too much. You want that texture. I want that texture anyway. And it gives it a little bit of tooth too to hang on to more color that I might be putting on. This is a fun thing to do, to try and create. You never know what you're going to get. And that's something I love about creating, you know, kind of wildly without any kind of like stamps or direction or anything. Just going for it. See, and my feeling is it's way too light down at the bottom, but we'll remedy that. So now I've got a little bit of a kind of a rough, sort of almost a sparkly texture. That's okay. Perfectly fine with that. It's gonna be best to go ahead and, I don't know, I'm sitting here wondering what I'm doing. Oh yeah. So I'm grabbing some more of the rusty hinge, and now see there's some tooth for this to hang on to. And I'm kind of force dripping it. There we go. Really want that to drip down. And now I'm going to grab the black soot. I'm going to go pretty heavy on the bottom. And then kind of let that run a bit. Run it to the side and let that side part just run down the whole tag. And I'm not going to dip my card in that black because I don't want any black on that one. So this has got to dry again, so we're going to let it dry. And now that it's dry, I want some color at the top, so I'm going to use the Uncharted Mariner, and I'm going to go in and just kind of lightly blend in some color. And see where my ink is still kind of wet there. It's fine. I like how it's spreading out. You never know what you're going to get. All right, now for the fun part. Here we go. You ready for this? Let me grab, what am I trying to grab here? I don't know. I forgot what I'm trying to grab. Golly, it took me hours to make this thing, and this video is only less than 45 minutes. Oh yeah, I was looking for my bubble stamp. So I'm using the new bubble stamp from Tim Holtz, and I'm just going to make some texture at the top there. I'm going to use some black archival ink. And I'm not going to put it on a stamp platform or anything. I'm just going to lay it down by hand. Make sure it's good and inked up. This stamp is so versatile. I can't even believe some of the cool stuff you can do with it. It doesn't ever have to be just bubbles. So I'm just pressing down, making sure it makes contact, and now I've got myself a nice texture going on there at the top. Now we need to kind of get ready to get some more texture in here and rust. So what do we have? Cinnamon. Yeah, this is cinnamon. And it's just regular, I think it's Saigon or something. I don't know. My husband buys it and he drinks it in his coffee. He says that it's good for his diabetes. I don't know about that, but I've got the cinnamon, so whatever. And I'm going to be using some Distress Collage Medium and a paintbrush. And what I'm going to be doing here is just going into some random spots and some directed spots. So kind of around those rusty areas. I'm just going to dab in some of that medium, and then I'm going to dump on the cinnamon. And then your card smells good too, or your project. And I'm just going to continue to do that in various spots, just to kind of, you know, add that extra texture of what rust might look like. I don't know, that's what it looks like on my cast iron. So you're probably thinking to yourself, that's a lot of work for a tag. Yeah, it is. But, you know, I mean, sometimes, you know, I do design team stuff and I really enjoy doing that. But sometimes I just want to do my own thing. And when this challenge cropped up and I saw Louisa Heinzel's 5 items, I downloaded the other one that was Rhonda's with the girls at the sea, but I haven't done it yet. But I saw Barbara at 49 Dragonflies do this one today, and I went, oh, that's what I'm doing today. I'm just gonna do something for fun. And I'm gonna go pretty heavy down in the corners. And a lot of this you'll see will tap off. It's the only part it's gonna really stick to is where the collage medium is. And do the other corner. And I have to apologize in advance. A lot of me putting this thing together, I thought I was filming. Guess what? I wasn't filming. And, you know, once it's put together, you can't unput it together and put it back together again to retake the video. So apologies in advance that you don't see me putting it together, but it's, you know, it's pretty simple. The main part is getting the rust and the fish. Oh my gosh, these fish, I just love them. So I'm just gonna tap that off. I'm gonna let it dry. And I'm gonna clean up my mess here because I have cinnamon everywhere. Okay, now that it's dry, I'm gonna come in with some distressed paint. So I told you there's a lot of mediums involved in this. I'm just gonna start out with the black, and I'm just gonna kind of dry brush, stipple around here and there. And I do have this sped up a little because, yeah. So I'm just kind of going around, bringing in the kind of rust and showing just more dirt and grunge. Get that a bit grungy. Missed a spot, that's okay. We're doing grunge. Grunge works. So then I'm gonna go in with the tarnish brush because I want some metal here, right? But I don't need a bunch, and so I'm just gonna go in multiple little spots and just add some metal element here. Just here and there. And I'm just tapping lightly with my brush. So just to confuse things, because why would there be bright shiny metal where there's rust? Well, because it's me. And I want some metal on here. This color does dry back a little bit too. You'll see. So I wonder what medium we're going to be using next. Well, first of all, before we go much further, we're going to let this dry, and then we're going to flip it over and work on the other side, because remember I said it's a two-sided tag, and I have to use all 5 items. So on this side, I've got the rust. All right, so see, you totally missed. I'm just kind of looking at how I want to compose this, and I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do yet, but I do know that I want to deal with the colors on these things. So I printed the 5x7 on photo paper, and I have an inkjet printer, and this is what happens. I'm actually okay with that. I do end up using it, I think. Yeah, I do end up using it, but I didn't quite expect that to happen. So, hello, my mistake live, but I like it though, because it does give it that kind of faded, vintagey look. And I'm gonna go ahead and give it some color now too, because I don't want it to be white. I'm just gonna go over it with my antique linen. Just to kind of give it just a little bit of an edge there, so that it doesn't look, you know, brand new and white. And I'll probably put black around the edges. Not sure what I'm going to do with that yet. I am going to just darken the edges though with the black archival ink, and then set it aside to kind of dry a little bit, because again, it's glossy photo paper. And I don't know what possessed me to print that in that photo paper, but I'm happy I did, because the little fish that I'm using work out nicely with it. So now I'm going to have to clean up all that black so I don't get it all over everything. And what I want to do though is the little fish, I'm going to emboss him just all over with clear embossing powder, just to make him kind of stand out. See, I'm a hot mess right now. I do need to I'm going to take a black pen and I'm going to go all around all the edges of the fish that I cut out. And I fussy cut all this stuff. I do enjoy fussy cutting, but I want to, get rid of any white that's showing through. And I'm not mad if I get ink where it's not supposed to go at all. So I'm just going all the way around. This is an alcohol marker that's just about dead. The brush end is completely frayed because this is all I use it for. So it's about time to get a new one, but I'm not buying an expensive one because this is all I do with it. And I end up later having to use my Sharpie because this thing is basically almost out of ink completely. Just kind of check in for other little white spots that I want to fill in without going too crazy. Because, one slip of the hand and you can wreck the whole piece. So come in from the back on those tiny parts, and then I'm going to leave it at that because, my gosh, I do not want to wreck that. This is my favorite fish out of all the fish. So I'm going to just take my clear embossing powder container here, and I'm going to grab my Versamark ink, and I'm just basically going to take my tweezers, grab this fish, dip him in the Versamark, dip him in the embossing powder, emboss him, and then repeat. Although I'm just going to take the already hot embossed piece and just dip it right back in. It's just a lot easier to do it that way. So go ahead and heat emboss that. And I'm keeping it real close to my embossing powder because I want to dip it while it's hot. And boy, does that ever bring out the color in that little fish. My goodness. See, and just get more embossing powder. Blow a little bit away. That's okay. Get them covered good. And when you've got two coats, it moves around a bit. So you have time to set it down and move some of it onto that fin that I was holding on to. Love it. Oh my gosh. I would have this fish huge. I just love the way that she colored this fish and the way his scales are and stuff. I don't know. So I'm going to kind of just pick him up here with my tweezers a little and decide on placement here on the tag. Still not sure where I'm going to put him, but I know he's going to go up here because that's supposed to resemble the water. And I know that I want this little piece of ruler, I guess. One of them. I want one of them on there. And I will put black. We'll do black around the whole edge of that too. And I don't know why I didn't edit, this part of the video, but whatever, because, I plan on premiering this, so we're going to be hanging out anyway. I love Louisa Heinzel's work. If you've never been to her channel, she does, mostly junk journaling. She's not a card maker, but she does some wonderful, beautiful, amazing work, as well as Barbara from 49 Dragonflies. Now, Rhonda, I don't know. I've not seen her channel, but you can bet when I'm done with this, I'm going to check her out. Because I really enjoy the way the art style of the junk journal. So make sure you check all three of their channels, and they're all doing this challenge. They don't know me at all, but that's okay. I know them. So I'll be putting this little boy, because he's one of the elements, and I end up putting the smaller one that I had printed out on photo paper. But I need to do something here with the back of this, so I'm just going to go pad to paper here. And remember, I have gesso on here, so it does resist a bit. And then I'm just going to take a paper towel, because this will get everywhere. and clean it up, sort of. I'm just going to lay the paper towel down, and then I'll just wipe at it, because I don't want any excess ink. I just want what's going to stick. But to make sure it sticks, yeah, see, you get a little fingerprint in there. Have a little of my DNA. I want to make sure it sticks, so I'm going to get my clear gesso, and I'm going to be using my finger tool for this. Actually, fingers. So I'm just going to dip into the clear gesso and rub it on. Let me get this little guy out of the way. And make a sloppy mess, which is fine. That's how I like to craft. Look at my fingers, that's funny. And I noticed something when I was doing this, that I could do a really neat little texture here that, I don't know, kind of reminded me of sea urchins, so I'm going for it. This is how I discover a lot of methods, because I'm a sloppy crafter. So we call those happy accidents. We'll let that dry. Okay, now that's nice and dry, and I've got a nice texture going on there. And now I don't have to worry about the ink coming off on me. So I'm going to use this tag piece, and I'm going to cut that down some because I don't want the tag shape on there. So I'll just take my trimmer and cut it down. And I'm just barely cutting a little bit past the top of the tag shape. And then, in as much as I love the pattern that's on here, I'm going to rip it. Not a bunch, just some. And only on one side. And I'm doing this because I don't really want this part to be too uniform. I want a little chaos going with it. And not sure exactly where I'm going to put that yet. I'm going to think that over. Yeah, maybe that side, maybe the other side, but I do know that I want to distress the edges of it, whatever. So I'm just going to take my walnut stain and distress these edges. I'm going to make some tags, just plain tags with those too, with that. You know, a printable is a printable. So I'm going to set this aside. And why am I setting that aside? Oh yeah, I'm looking for something here. I'm going to go in with my bubble stamp again, and I'm going to go in with Uncharted Mariners so that I can bring some of the color from the background into this piece. And whenever I'm working like this, I just set things aside willy-nilly, and then I can never find them because I've set one thing on top of it, and then another thing on top of it, and then another thing on top of it. So bear with me here while I dig around for my stamp. You know, it's a huge stamp. It's not like a teeny tiny thing. It's a big thing. So it's crazy. Where are you? Well, meanwhile, enjoy the little fishy on my desk here. We'll get it. I'm sure of it. Well, still looking. All right, here it is, finally. And I'm just wiping off the other ink that I had on there. And then this is where I stopped for a second and I stopped filming, but you can see that I stamped that onto that that little side piece, and here we are. I've got this all put together because again, I wasn't filming when I thought I was, and so we're just gonna kind of go from here. Okay, I cut out a new little boy, but I still wasn't crazy about it. I go through quite a few little boys in this one, and the little boy that I cut out, I accidentally cut part of his face. Okay, so I have it all put together. Thanks to the lost footage, you get to see it when it's finally put together here. So I did a little bit of shading around the little fish, and here's the little boy and the number. And then flip it over, and I've got that faded number that I had and the ruler piece and the little fish. And then what I'm going to do here is I have to write something on there. I almost forgot, and I do not like my own handwriting, and I don't want to wreck this, but here we go. And I think I'm going to put just keep swimming, because I don't know, I couldn't think of anything witty to write. But since they're fish, and since I do love Dory and her attitude, I'm going with Dory. And I'm just using my Stabilo All pencil. And see, I don't think this through with the word swimming, so we're just going to make that word fall down. Yes, it's supposed to be like that. There we go. And I did tie a piece of twill tape to the top. We'll just put a couple of X's in there just for fun. And I'm going to get that twill tape dirty here. So there's the one side. And the little fish and little boy are cut from photo paper. Here's the other side, and this is way too white for my taste, so I'm just going to take any old dirty brush, I don't care which one it is, and I'm just going to get that dirty. Since I have a dirty brush sitting here, why not? And then I'd like to add just a touch of sparkle to this because I can. Because why not? So I'm just going to go in with my stickles here. And generally I like to test it out on a piece of scrap paper first to make sure it doesn't come out in one big splat. I'm just going to test it. Okay, it's working fine. I'm just going to make 3 dots. Maybe they're bubbles. Maybe they're jewels. Who knows what they are? They're 3 dots. Get that dot kind of uniform to the other ones, and there we go. This tag is done. All 5 completed. Hoo-hoo! So on the other side, I had popped up the torn piece that I did so that I could get the fish kind of tucked underneath. And then if you had your hands on here, you could feel that texture of that cinnamon, but you can kind of see it. And then see, I've got this portion popped up. And that's it. That's all I got for you. But look, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. These challenges are a lot of fun, and they don't really cost anything because the digital download is free. And all you have to do is print it out and then just keep swimming.